Hello everybody, Michael here for Tactica Imperialis. Welcome to today's video. Today is going to be a final wrap up for Codex Analysis Skitarii and Codex Analysis Cult Mechanicus. This is going to be an Adeptus Mechanicus combined review. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be taking Skitarii and Cult Mechanicus, who we reviewed in full on the channel. Go and check the links in the description to check out the first episode in their reviews. And then we're going to bring them together in order to create a full look at what the Adeptus Mechanicus can bring to the table. Because it's kind of evident looking at these two codices that they're not full codices. They need to be put together to create a full combined army. And when I run through the pros and cons list that I've got over on my screen here, you might see a little bit of synergy between the two as to why they should really be treated as one codex. The first thing that I should get out of the way is Skitarii is the better codex. Skitarii has more going for it than Cult Mechanicus, particularly with the meta that we have. And let me explain that. So what are the good things about the Skitarii codex? Well, they're good at light infantry and getting rid of large units, such as Orc Boys, Tyranid Gaunts, or something of that ilk, or dealing with Eldar Guardians and Tau Fire Warriors. They are excellent at dealing with vehicles. They have Haywire out the wazoo. And they're reasonable against flyers. They have a dedicated Skyfire unit if they want in the Naked Dune Crawler, and they have a relic that can hit flyers with Haywire as well. Their troop cost is pretty low, so you have a lot of points spare for the big, scary, expensive stuff. If you want them to be, they're very, very fast. They have a couple of different builds they can use, either very defensive or very offensive, using the Dune Strider special rule to move ludicrously fast. Their formations are also quite strong, although they are quite expensive in a fair few cases. Their issues are thus: they have a weakness to monstrous creatures, in terms of having high strength weaponry to deal with them. They lack AP3, although weight of firepower can compensate for this to a degree, and AP2 is the same issue, though there is some of that knocking around as well. They have no Psychers and no defense against Psychers, and their toughness 3 means that their feel no pain is not as strong as it could be on, let's say, an Orc or a Space Marine, and it is only a 6+. Their vehicles are quite flimsy, being armor 11 with 2 hull points, the Dune Crawlers being the exception, and they do have a lack of build variety due to only having 7 units in the entire codex. They also have no dedicated HQ choice, as their warlord must be selected from a Ranger, Vanguard, Alpha, or a Rust Stalker, or a Infiltrated leader. I've forgotten the sergeant name right now, it might just be another Alpha. So they have a few issues, but they deal with light infantry, hordes, vehicles, and flyers reasonably well, and weight of firepower can help against elite armies. If you look at Cult Mechanicus, their basic troops are very, very tough. Their toughness 5, they've got 3-up save, they've got a decent number of wounds, they're hard to put down. They have a proper HQ choice in the Tech Priest Dominus, who can take a hit. You also have the Datasmith as a second optional warlord character who hides in the Castellan robot units, and so is extremely durable as well. Their robots are ludicrously tough as well. Toughness 7, a good few wounds, and a 3-up save as well, and feel no pain as an option if you choose that battle protocol. They're decent at taking out vehicles. They have Haywire, they have monstrous creatures, and they have a decent number of weapons that are a reasonable strength. The Torsion Cannon, they've got the Graviton Gun, they're pretty good at that. However, they have no vehicles of their own. This could be treated as a pro if a person has taken a lot of Haywire weapons, but realistically the only army that packs a lot of Haywire is Dark Eldar, and you don't see those competitively, and they have poison to deal with monsters and heavy stuff anyway. Their units and formations are extremely expensive. The Castellan robots are very expensive, the basic troops in the Cataphrons are very expensive, even the Electro Priests cost a lot for what they are, which is very, very flimsy, until they kill something in close combat in the case of one of them, and the other one gets no buffs to it whatsoever. They're not very good at killing hordes, really. They have a few multi-shot weapons, but because they've got so few models, they don't have the ludicrous amount of shots that you need to put things down, and they don't have that many blast weapons that work at long range. They have no Psychic, again, although that's in keeping with the Mechanicus theme, and they lack anti-air entirely. They're also very slow, because everything moves at infantry pace, and there's nothing you can do about it, And because of their Canticles of the Omnissiah working on number of units that you have in your army, you need a large army and therefore a large amount of points, even if you don't take many actual models, just to maximize out the power, because you need 8+ units to get the maximum effect, and you minimum need 4 to make them get to the middle level, and you'll probably want 6 just so as you don't drop off the lower level as soon as units start dying. Skitarii, on the other hand, with their Doctrina Imperatives, don't have this problem. They are automatic effects, but they are still multiplied as the army gets larger, but you don't require that large army to even get those effects to multiply. So, did you notice a few things that they contrast with each other? Skitarii have flimsy troops and flimsy stuff. Cult Mechanicus have tough troops and tough stuff. Cult Mechanicus are slow. Skitarii are fast. And Cult Mechanicus have no anti-air. Skitarii have a very good amount of anti-air. Cult Mechanicus are expensive, Skitarii are cheap. They have a few shared weaknesses, primarily their build options, although having 2 armies mixed together can help with this, their lack of psychic, and the Cult Mechanicus still don't have a huge amount of AP3. They have enough AP3, primarily on the Castellan robots, but the main way to maximize the Castellan robots is to put them in a formation where they split fire, and that's ridiculously expensive to pull off because it's 2 units and you probably need 2 data smiths and then a Tech Priest Dominus on top of that. So it's very hard to pull off the AP3 that you need. They have a shared strength as well. They will wreck vehicles, which you'd expect. They're the Mechanicus. They're the masters of technology. But this leads to the question, well, Michael, I want to build an Adeptus Mechanicus army. Who is my primary detachment? Well, let's start by asking who is your allied detachment and then working that out. So running with the old system where you had primary detachment, allied detachment, I know you can have 2 full-on detachments now, but if you want to take it as one with allied with the other, you have to take Skitarii as your core. You have no choice in this matter for the simple reason of there is no HQ in Skitarii to take up the allied HQ slot. None. So you have to take Cult Mech as your allied slot, which means that their Canticles are terrible. But this is not a problem anymore. Oh, no, you don't have to worry about this anymore. You can take 2 proper detachments. But which one should be your primary? That should be your Cult Mechanicus, in my opinion. Because Cult Mechanicus have tough leaders and tough places to hide them. The Tech Priest Dominus has Artificer Armor, Feel No Pain, and is pretty hard to put him down. He's a 3-wound Terminator, pretty much. He's a 3-wound Terminator, is how I summed him up. And he may even have Toughness 5, I forget, or you can give him Toughness 5 perhaps with a Relic. He's extremely hard to put down, and the Destroyers and Breaches that you can hide him in are all Toughness freaking 5 with 3 wounds and a 3-up save as well. So killing a Cult Mechanicus Warlord is very, very difficult. However, this doesn't mean that your Skitarii are in big trouble because Doctrina Imperatives do not rely on it being your primary detachment. In fact, neither of them rely on it being your primary detachment to make it work. I also say use Cult Mechanicus because the Skitarii Warlord traits are good, but they're a bit mixed. I think you'll probably get more out of a Dominus either using the Cult Mech table or using actual Warlord trait table because he'll be pretty helpful in that regard as well. I'm not going to talk about using different formations and different combinations here because that's very in-depth and that's something that you'll have to learn on your own. It's something that I'd have to play test extensively and that would mean requiring buying an entire army of Cult Mechanicus and Skitarii. I don't have the time, money or energy to do that. So that's the main meat of it. If you're going to run this army, Cult Mechanicus is your primary and Skitarii is your secondary. Because Mechanicus has the tougher Warlord and probably is going to use the Warlord traits better. But what about composition? Well, let's assume you're using the force organization charts presented in those 2 codices because you can't use the classic force org with Skitarii due to the fact that they have no HQ choice. So let's get their one up. And let's get the Cult Mechanicus one up. I won't be able to show them on screen, but I can open them up here and just have a look at them. So I open those 2. So the Cult Mechanicus one gives you... Oops. Oh, for goodness. I keep scrolling past them. I'm a bloomin' idiot. Here we go. Gives you 8 troops, 4 elites, and 2 heavy support. No fast attack slots. Obviously, that isn't something that matters. And you do lose a robot slot here. If you're running Cult Mechanicus, you need those robot slots. Honestly, you may actually be better running, what do you call it? Classic, the classic version, running typical combined arms detachment for the 3rd robot slot in extremely large games. However, this actually is quite important as a detachment because it allows you to reuse a canticle if you want to that you burned earlier in the game, which should not be underestimated as an ability. Now, the Skitarii one, if I just go and find it. Sorry about slightly shaky camera as I scroll, by the way. Come on. Lore, art. Forget how much artwork goes into these codices, and they get all spread out when you put them into E form as well, which is a nightmare. Right, here we go. More painting. More painting. Come on. Blimey, here we go. Sorry about that. Okay, so 2 troops, and then you have 4 elites, 6 more troops, 2 fast attack, 4 heavy support, fortification. Your warlords, you won't be having it in this case. All models have Crusader and Scout, but cannot outflank if they have that option too. Pretty good. The tireless advance rule helps give Skitarii that maneuverability that they had anyway because of the Dune Strider stuff, allowing them to be very, very mobile if they want to be using Rust Stalkers, Infiltrators, Dragoons, and Ballistari. So what are the absolutely essential picks? For both armies, what are the essential picks? Well, Skitarii Vanguard are probably better than Skitarii Rangers. For the simple reason of they're cheaper and they're designed to get a little bit closer. They can keep up with the Skitarii element of your army a little better, and their radium guns really do help to thin out infantry. This is a good thing. In your elite slot, you probably want Rust Stalkers and Infiltrators. Probably at least 1 of each. For the simple reason that Infiltrators' debuffs are ludicrous, and Rust Stalkers, if they can survive a turn in melee, will rip everything to flipping shreds. There is unfortunately no way that I can see to buff their toughness, to make them more survivable using Cult Mech. You could possibly hide the Tech Priest Dominus in there and have him sponge wounds, but unfortunately, he's slow. He doesn't have Dune Strider, and that will slow the Rust Stalkers down when you have to use them as a counter-assault unit, which is not the point. In terms of fast attack, you will probably want at least 1 unit of Iron Strider Ballistari, just so as you have some more chugging away firepower. It's maneuverable because it's on a walker base, it's quite quick because it has Dune Strider, I believe, and that means that you can get some firepower out of them. And having Cognus Las Cannons means that you can pose a threat to monsters and start chipping away at those as well. If you want the auto cannons, that's another option, but then you lose some AP3, AP2. In heavy support, you must, and I mean you must, have a Dune Crawler with Skyfire in any competitive matchup, because pretty much everybody runs flyers. Whether it be flyers, vehicles, or flying monster creatures, pretty much everybody has something that flies. Pretty much the only army that I think never uses them is probably Tau. Eldar, maybe not, and I don't think you see much Dark Eldar competitively, but Guard will use them, Marines will use them, Orcs will probably be forced to use them. The Wasdon Blastjet might be actually quite good. I haven't looked at it. Chaos will swear by Helldrakes. Tyranids will have monstrous creatures out the berserk. That didn't make any sense. But generally, you will be coming across flyers. Oh, Demons and Necrons as well. They're going to have flyers everywhere. You're going to need anti-flyer, and so you should have Dune Crawlers. That is not negotiable. So, that's Skitarii. But what about Cult Mechanicus? Because they're open on top of each other. Cult Mechanicus. Well, you'll want robots. And you will want the Cataphrons. You have to take 2 units of Cataphrons of some sort, and they will be pretty helpful in terms of toughness, objective camping, and putting out some heavy firepower if you want them to. In terms of which one you should take, well, your Cult Mechanicus is going to be a bit more of the static one. It's going to be camping objectives, doing damage, probably at longer range. As a result, you may want to consider using the Cataphron Destroyers because they have Plasma Culverins, which will really help you whittle through stuff, although they have worse saves than the Cataphron Breachers. The Heavy Grav Cannon will help you with heavy infantry as well, although in terms of light infantry, you're going to be relying very heavily on your Skitarii if you do it that way. You do have Phosphor Blasters as well, and in terms of the the breachers, you have the Heavy Arc Rifle or the Torsion Cannon. The Torsion Cannon is pretty damn powerful, and the Heavy Arc Rifle is more haywire if you so need it. I would probably recommend going with the Destroyers. The Plasma Culverins will really help whittle stuff down, which is probably what you need them to do. Your HQ, you'll have to take a Death Priest Dominus, that's not negotiable, but you should be doing that anyway. And he'll be your Warlord, which is nice. In terms of elites, should you take Electro Priests? The answer is probably yes. Just to give the enemy something else that's flimsy to shoot at that isn't your Vanguard or Rangers, depending on what sort of build you're going for. The more light infantry is on the board, the more your opponent's going to have to split his firepower to deal with them. So having a couple of units of Electro Priests certainly couldn't hurt. You have 4 slots, remember, so it's not too bad. The Fulgurite Electro Priests, who rely on getting into close combat, are probably the bigger distraction unit. They're more of a distraction Carnifex because of their 5+ Invulnerable, 5+ Feel No Pain, the ability to get 3+ Feel No Invulnerable if they can kill something in melee with their Electrostatic Gauntlets. Yeah, that's correct. Whereas the Skitarii, they shoot, so might actually want to do something. Wait a minute. There's a typo in here. It says that the blooming... oh, it says that both units have Electrostatic Gauntlets. And I don't think that's true. I'm pretty sure that the, whatchamacallums have something else entirely. The Electro Leech Stave. Yep, the Electro Leech Stave. Oh dear. Oh dear, Mr. Codex Writer. I think this has been typoed. Oops. But yeah, the Fulgurites are the bread of distraction Carnifex because of their melee power, and the Skitarii, while they only have short range with their Electrostatic Gauntlets, are nice and annoying and a good second wave to follow up with your Skitarii Vanguard to deal with, well, just stuff. And then, of course, you'll want to use both your heavy support slots on robots if you have the room. Now, you notice that that's in the ideal scenario, and you're spending a metric ton of points to make all that work. So, of course, you're going to have to start siphoning off things. Now, the only actual essential elements are the troops on both sides, so the Vanguard/Rangers, the Cataphrons, and the Tech Priest Dominus. They're the only essential units. You will probably need the Dune Crawler, need a unit of robots, and probably need another Sidonian and Sicarian unit from the Skitarii, and it would not hurt to have a unit of Electro Priests on top of that. Again, that's still a lot, and this is the problem with Mechanicus. Everything costs a flipping ton, and making a cheap army out of it is going to be very, very difficult, because the minimum cost of your Cult Mechanicus detachment is, as soon as I do some more scrolling, 105, they're 150, is 405 points. Absolute minimum for your Breachers and your Tech Priest Dominus. On the Skitarii side, it's a lot cheaper. You can get them very, very cheap for those 2 units of troops. Done. Easy peasy. But once you start adding in Dune Crawlers and Robots, which is probably the 2 most powerful units and probably the 2 most necessary units, the points costs start to spiral very, 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 very fast. Rust Stalkers as well and Infiltrators are also very, very costly. So what I would recommend is, if you are planning to play Adeptus Mechanicus, generally, start with Skitarii. Get a Skitarii army up to, let's say, 1,000 points. That will be a decent core, and if you want to go higher to 1,500 to make sure you have a little bit of everything, or a lot of everything, then go for it. Then, and only then, add in your Cult Mechanicus and start subtracting from your Skitarii with the extra stuff to make the Cult Mechanicus fit. Cult Mechanicus will only work from probably 1,500 points upwards if it wants to be very effective. If it wants to have proper robot units, enough Cataphrons to work, a decent Dominus, and maybe even Electro Breed, you have to spend a lot of points, and that's a fact. So this army will probably start working at its best once you get to 2,000. The Skitarii element can probably go all the way down to 2 units of Vanguard, a Dune Crawler, or 2, and maybe a unit of Rust Stalkers for some close combat. That's probably all you absolutely need. And all that's going to actually cost you to do, bare min, obviously we're going to talk bare minimums here, because it's hard to then account for upgrades, is 110 points for the Vanguard, for both units of the Vanguard at lowest cost, 160, so that's 270. Rustalker Princeps, that's the word I was looking for earlier. Dragoons are quite cheap if you want to do it that way, and Dune Crawlers are only 90. So you only probably need 500 points. I mean, I've only delivered off 360 bare minimum, but you'll then have to pay for the Skyfire Array, which is another 35 points, 300. 400, sorry. So you need probably 500 to 750 points to make the Skitarii function. That's all you really need. The Cult Mechanicus will take up the rest of your points, which is okay. The only other question is, do you run the Mechanicum detachment for reusing a protocol, canticle, sorry, or do you trade that out for the extra robot slot in large games at the cost of an Electro Priest slot and 2 Cataphron slots you probably weren't using, in order to gain a robot slot, a HQ slot if you want a second Dominus to go and camp with somebody else, and objective secured. The question basically is, how important is objective secured to you? Because your Cataphrons are tough, but will they be overscored? Unlikely. Most people like their own detachments, and you can run Battleforged as well, but once Decurions become commonplace, which they already are, but once every army has a Decurion, in fact, most armies apart from Mechanicus do have a Decurion, thinking about it, most units won't have objective secured anyway, so you don't have to worry about being overscored. It's, do you want to overscore back? The problem is you're not going to be doing much overscoring with Cult Mechanicus because they're so damn slow. You have no way to get up the board quickly, which is what your Skitarii will do, but they can't run combined arms because they don't have a HQ. So there are issues with Mechanicus, but a lot of the issues do sort of self-resolve when you put the two armies together. You have more speed if you're playing. You have more speed, more anti-infantry, a bit more anti-vehicle, and some anti-flyer, and some low-cost stuff if you're a Cult Mechanicus player. And if you're a Skitarii player, you gain toughness, you gain bulk, you gain heavy weapons, and you gain a proper HQ to accompany you. That's what they play off with each other. And that's very useful. But there are still some glaring holes that I think it will take a bit of skill to overcome. I do not believe Mechanicus, even in its combined form, is going to be up there. It's not going to be top tier. It will be strong. I don't disagree. I think it could be quite strong in the right hands. But there's a lot of synergy in Mechanicus revolving around the Canticles and the Doctriners. You have to know how to use those two abilities perfectly in order to make them high tier armies. Because without them, if you misuse a Canticle, let's say you use something too early that you were going to need later because you want to get the maximum effect, well, crap. If you undercook a Doctriner or overcook a Doctriner, so you underbuff or overnerf yourself, you're stuffed as well. So there is a tactical element to it, and that is something that I can't teach because it's not something I've played in depth. But that is my combined review of Adeptus Mechanicus. They're pretty good, but they will get wrecked in the current meta because Psychic is everywhere, and they can't really deal with monsters and AP3 very well. They can deal with them pretty well, but not very well. And of course, Psyker, huge problem. And they still might struggle against Living Carpet, Guard, Orcs, or Tyranids, just because the Cult Mechanicus take up so many points that you can't get enough anti-infantry Skitarii into your army to thin the hordes enough. And Rust Stalkers will just get swamped even though their combat ability is off the flipping charts. So there you go. thank you very much for watching the review. If you are a Mechanicus player, either Skitarii, Cult Mechanicus, or both, do feel free to let me know what you think in the comments below. I'll be very interested to see what you have to say. Start a discussion amongst yourselves, and I'll be happy to chip in where I can. So, thank you very much for watching. My name is Michael for Tactica Imperialis, and may the Machine God watch over you. See you all again.